Hi, everyone. Welcome back to iTech 2020. We're really excited about the program that we have lined up today, and we hope that you enjoyed what you've seen so far. Right now, we have a really special presentation. We have a panel of some amazing women leaders throughout the tire industry who are going to share some insights regarding the challenges, opportunities, and even some of the wisdoms that they've discovered along their professional journeys. Before we get to that, though, I want to introduce you to our moderator, Lakeisha Miller-Barclay. She is the Executive Director and CEO of the American Chemical Society's Rubber Division. Lakeisha Miller-Barclay is responsible for providing daily operational leadership to the team, as well as serving as a spokesperson, developing partnerships with other organizations, and maintaining good communications with the Executive Committee, rubber groups, and American Chemical Society. In her previous role as the Rubber Division's Director of Finance and Administration, a position she held for more than 12 years, Lakeisha's responsibility included the day-to-day financial management of the group, as well as the long-term planning and reporting. If anyone knows anything about Lakeisha, it's that she's a team player. When the Rubber Division needed her most, she stepped up to take on additional responsibilities, including managing IT, technology, and human resources. Ultimately, it was her leadership and her success in those roles that led her to become the Executive Director and CEO in January. A self-proclaimed forever learner, Lakeisha is working to become a Certified Association Executive, a credential that serves as the marker of a committed association professional who has demonstrated a range of knowledge essential to manage an association in today's challenging environment. So without any further ado, I am excited to introduce you to Lakeisha. Lakeisha, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Erin, for having me. I am honored and thrilled to be here today with all of you and to participate in this fantastic panel. iTech has assembled a very diverse group of women with different backgrounds, and they're going to be able to give us some fantastic insight and tell their stories in relation to leadership. We also invite you, the attendees, to submit questions via email to rpnevents@crane.com. And you can also network with each panelist on the virtual site. So I look forward to seeing those questions come in. Keep them coming. All right, our very first panelist today is Cara Adams. She's Director of Race Tire Engineering and Production, Chief Engineer, Bridgestone Americas. Welcome, Cara.
Thank you very much, Lakeisha, and thanks to iTech for having this wonderful group of panelists. I'm really proud to be part of them. You'll get to know each one of them. They all have very impressive backgrounds. And I'll talk a little bit about mine. My name is Cara Adams, and like I said, I started at Bridgestone in 2003. I'm currently the Director of Race Tire Engineering and Manufacturing. I started a year out of college doing noise and vibration work, NVH work at Bridgestone. I really enjoyed that, but I really wanted to work in racing. So I went to the manager of the Race Tire Engineering Group at the time, and I said, I would really love to work at your group. What kind of skills or traits are you looking for in your perfect engineer? He told me. I went out, I bought textbooks, I studied so that when he was able to have that interview, that I was the best qualified candidate for that. So I started out working on street course tires. I moved to road course tires and eventually the Indianapolis 500 tire design. It's a phenomenal team of engineers and chemists, compounders that all work together to put these amazing tires on the racetrack. And I've moved from there to, in 2012, I was able to lead the team. I was able to become the chief engineer for Race Tire Engineering and lead the engineering team. And then most recently, I've been promoted to Director of Race Tire Engineering and Manufacturing. And there I lead both the engineering teams and our production teams. So I work a lot in the plants. I go to the racetrack and able to follow the product and lead this incredibly talented group of engineers and chemists and technicians. And one of the really great things about this group is it's such a diverse group. So we have anywhere from people that are cleaning the shop floors to people that are very highly educated engineers and chemists and people with strong leadership backgrounds. It is a really, really phenomenal team. And there are challenges in leading such a diverse group of teams, but I've looked at a lot of the things over the time that I've been able to lead the team, and I found 5 fundamental truths that really help me out as I am leading this team of very diverse people. One is getting input from everyone, whether it's the person that's cleaning the floor. When I started out in racing, I started out at the University of Akron, and I actually started in the Formula SAE team, and that's the only thing I was able to contribute to is cleaning the floor and cleaning the tables and marking up drawings because I really didn't know anything. I needed to start from somewhere. So I found that everyone throughout the organization has input if you have time to ask them. So go out on the shop floors, go out wherever you're at, and talk to people about what they do and see what kind of suggestions or ideas, which leads me to my second point, which is rewarding that problem solving. If they have great ideas, talk to them about how to implement those great ideas, listen to them, and reward that problem solving. So whether it's some kind of actual award, whether you're giving them an award or just giving them great feedback and letting them know what their role is important, those are all really important ways to do that. And then the next thing is sharing customer feedback. So I work in racing. We have a very, very, very tough customer. There may be 33 drivers in the Indianapolis 500, and one of them has great feedback, and the other 32 think that there is something that we could have changed to help them win. So we're always looking to customer feedback, but we don't want to just share that with the engineers. We want to share it with the entire production team. So regardless of what industry you're in, if you have that feedback from the customer, make sure it gets all the way throughout the organization, which leads me into making sure they understand where their place in the organization is. You should be able to talk to everybody in the organization and have them understand how what they do fits into the whole of what you're trying to accomplish. So the next is trusting your team, being able to just stand back and let them work, set a vision, a direction, and a timeline, and depending on their level, just let them take over. Sometimes, especially if we are in roles that we have done in the past as an individual contributor, sometimes it's easy for us to think, oh, I know how to do this. But your team may have a better idea, and they're going to have more energy if they are involved in making that decision and figuring out how to meet your vision with your timeline. And then the last I have is bench strength. I have a phenomenal production manager. One of the things that he has taught me is being able to just develop the next you. Think about who the next you is. And if there is no next you, how do you go out and how do you either recruit for that position or how do you develop within your team to get to that position? So that's my quick management philosophy in 5 data points there. And with that, I'll give it back to Lakeisha.
Thank you so much, Cara. The thing that I keep hearing there is definitely listening and accepting that feedback. Those are all fantastic ideas and great leadership capabilities and necessities. All right, next up on the list, we have Stephanie Beaulac. She's Vice President of HR at Yokohama. Take it away, Stephanie.
Thank you for having me today and giving me the opportunity to participate at this event. So I'm Stephanie Beaulac. I've been with Yokohama for about 6.5 years now. And I'm probably taking this in a slightly different direction, but I was thinking about this event and what I want to talk about. And I couldn't help but reflect on the recent experiences I had when I attended 2 local networking events late last year. So the topic for both was how do we get more females into leadership roles, which is a topic we all keep hearing a lot more about. When we look at this panel, we have a focus on female leaders. So I thought I'd share how these events impacted me. To do that, I thought I'd tell you a bit of a story about a snapshot of these events I attended. So the first event was held at a local college, had professionals from many different industries, both male and female. The guest speaker was the CEO of a very large Fortune 500 company, who kicked off the discussion by asking everyone to share what skills they think women need in business to elevate into leadership roles. And I was thinking to myself, well, the same skills men need, right? I mean, I didn't understand why that was a question. So I was shocked to hear things at this event, such as women need stronger finance skills. Women need to learn more to be assertive and not aggressive. Women need to be able to talk male lingo, such as sports stats. I was most taken back by one attendee story about how big decisions were made after hours over drinks at her company. And although she's a COO, she was rarely invited to those events. Instead, she received comments like, "You didn't think you'd want to join us since you have to get home to your children." I kind of raised my hand again and at that point jumped in and said, why are we making assumptions based on gender? Why do we assume that a man doesn't want to be home with his children and a female should be home? This isn't about competing in a man's world. This is about changing the way we conduct business today. Women shouldn't have to change to fit in. If we want more females in leadership roles, companies need to evolve, and we have a responsibility to ensure we have a culture and a work environment that supports females and creates opportunities for advancement. The conversation continued, a lot of banter back and forth. I then had shared that I had just attended another event, and this was about getting more women on boards. And at that event, I learned a lot, learned the experience, that it was a great event, people I met. I couldn't help questioning why women need to prove themselves from the start by taking a certification course. Being the only female on several different executive teams in my career past, I sat back and thought about my own personal experience. And there have been times that I was left out of the discussion or not invited to the dinner or the work trip, but I never took it personal. I didn't think it was malicious, but as leaders, we need to be mindful of how we make people feel and how our assumptions can be biased, whether we all recognize them or not. I realize that if these are the discussions and the conversations taking place at these events, then this is a much larger issue than I was aware of. So I came back to my office, I had a discussion with my HR team, and then I shared with my boss, the president of Yokohama. And he was proud that I spoke up at these events. I think he even gave me a high five, said that a girl. He's very supportive. He's a champion for women in leadership. And I realized that as leaders, we have a responsibility to change. Women are underrepresented in every leadership role in every business sector. We all need to extend a hand to other women. So I encourage all of you who are listening to reach out, to be a mentor, be a coach, a friend, help others around us succeed. As leaders, we need to create an environment where females are supported and feel confident to speak up. We need to create a balanced workplace where women feel supported to have a family and climb the corporate ladder. And they don't need to choose between the two. And once we open the door to create positive change by helping others, it will be easier to continue that trend. What I learned is that it goes a long way to have a supportive work environment and colleagues you can trust to have your back. I'm very fortunate because at Yokohama, we have a culture that feels like family. We genuinely have really great people who care deeply about the company and one another. We support a work-life balance, and it's really important that you find the right company that is aligned with your values and you believe in what they stand for. Throughout my roles at different companies, I've learned that no matter where you are positioned, you can transform a company through challenging what's going on in the organization, regardless of your title. And don't always be the one offering support. Speak up and offer guidance, take over the next lead on the next project you're part of. We tend to see that women take on support roles, and that's okay if that's the role you're looking for, but if it's not, I encourage you to speak up and ask for what you want. And if you're not getting it where you're at today, don't be afraid to move on. My advice to women is to speak up and share your opinions and ask questions. I used to battle with my former boss all the time, and years later he called me and said, I want you to know you made me a better CEO. You made me realize the value in the way you treat people. Good leaders don't hire people to agree with them. They hire you for your opinion, your skills, and to prove your value. And don't let someone else limit your potential. Include yourself in tough conversations and learn how you can support your company and how your company can support you. And don't be afraid to ask for help. It doesn't mean you're weak, it means you're human. And most important is to be kind and treat people how we want to be treated. Basically, my story is a lot of hard work and compromise, and sometimes you have to take risks, and you have to be okay with asking forgiveness and not permission. I've been in industrial manufacturing the majority of my career, and you don't tend to see a lot of women in this industry. And I've been very fortunate. I've worked for some great companies, some great leaders. I've been effective in driving the business, and I've never thought of myself as a female, but an executive and an equal partner. Thank you very much for having me today. And now I'll go back and bring it to Lakeisha.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. That were some very, very good insights. And I think the most important thing there is finding your voice and being okay to speak up. So thank you very much for that insight. Our next panelist is Andrea Berryman. She is Director of Product Management with Cooper Tires. Andrea?
Thank you, Lakeisha. Good afternoon, everyone. I just want to say I'm really excited to be here talking with you this afternoon. As mentioned, my name is Andrea Berryman, and I've been in the tire industry for over 25 years. I'm not going to put the total number on there, but I did start back at Cooper Tire in 2017 as a product manager for SUV tires and was recently promoted to director this year, just before COVID. Great timing. But my team is focused on leading new product development for North America Tire, as well as delivering on the product strategy. I had to think about this topic a little bit about what is my leadership style or philosophy. And I really got back to leadership is not necessarily if you're a manager or if you're a vice president or anything like that. Leadership could be at the entry level and all the way through your entire career. And then for me, probably the thing that I would say that is my style, is leading by example. And the three most important factors for me for my entire career have been my integrity, my continuous desire to learn, and then also, I know everybody says it, but personal balance. And I'll get into that in just a moment. But when it gets into the integrity side of things, and it's the reason I mention it first, is it can be really difficult sometimes to stick to your gun on your decisions. And always trying to do the right thing isn't necessarily popular. But again, it's something that, to me, it simplifies how you do business. Somebody that you talk to will always know that they're getting the straight scoop from you. And for me, that means I want to deliver the best product no matter what. And that is my only motive in this process. I've actually had some people during my career who said I would go nowhere because of my unwillingness to compromise on my ethics. But I kind of think getting to the director of a global tire company is getting someplace. And Cooper definitely values the integrity that I'm bringing to the business. And then finally, my team knows that they can trust what I'm saying, and it makes dealing with difficult situations easier, and difficult people as well, again, because they know that I'm being very upfront with them and I'm not trying to hide anything. The second item that I've always thought, again, from day one, is continuous learning. I kind of think that you need to learn a business from the ground level up, kind of like the dishwasher all of a sudden becoming the owner of the resort. When I first hired in tires, I saw people who had been sitting almost at the same desk for over 30 years doing the same thing. And that just wasn't what I wanted. I wanted to learn new things continuously. And looking back at my career, I have changed jobs about every 3 years or so. Most of it inside of one company, later moving to another. But I started off as a compounder. I went to a plant working as a process engineer, got my MBA while I was out there. I know for me, trying to move from engineering to a completely different functional area, I felt like I needed training. So I got an MBA. That moved me into market research, and I've done that. I've done sales. I've done category management. I even owned my own retail store at one point in time. So I really feel that I do a better job of communicating with other roles inside of a business, having done those roles myself, and I know understand their language, and they know that when they're talking to me, I'll understand what they're talking about because I've done it before. So that would be number 2, is again, continuous learning. And then I know I said it's cliche, but family balance is really important. Yes, you've got to take care of the business, but at the end of the day, it's your own personal health that you also have to maintain. And my team will tell you it's family first. You have a baseball game to go for it. You have a doctor's visit, go for it. I did take pauses in my career at various points so that I could be in roles where I could spend time with the kids. I don't regret it. It's not for everybody, but that's what worked for me. And now later in my career, I'm able to advance up the ladder, and it's at the timing that I chose. And I'm very comfortable with the fact that I waited that time. Again, not everybody has to, everybody's got a different trip through this whole thing. So basically, I just want to emphasize that, I think 3 great leadership qualities that everybody should look for, again, are learning, integrity, and just having a balance. But more than anything, again, I'm really happy to be here today talking to all of you. And at this point in time, I'd like to hand it back to Lakeisha. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrea. From one forever learner to another, I definitely can appreciate the migration through different fields and positions. It definitely makes us a more well-rounded person, I think, when it comes to leadership. Okay, last but not least, our last panelist today is Catherine Loss. She is head of Retread Worldwide with Continental. Catherine?
Yeah, thank you, Lakeisha, and thank you so much for the opportunity to share my experiences. I started with Continental in 2006. I was actually hired by Continental in the US for a training program in Germany. They said at the time that it would be 2 years. 8 years later, and various technical roles later, I was still in Germany. And then I had the opportunity to move to China to take over the head of our research and development organization for Asia Pacific passenger car tires. And I spent 3 years in Shanghai. And finally, in August of 2017, I found my way back to the US in this newly created role for global retread. So I think my journey with Continental has been a lot about a few different aspects, one of which I think, and maybe for me, the most critical was getting out of my comfort zone and being willing to constantly put yourself on that edge between, yeah, I'm not feeling so great about this, but what's the worst that can happen? Maybe it was a little easier when I was naive and 22 and a little bit more challenging the older I get, but I think that's, for me, one of the main things that I would like to say have really driven who I am as a leader and what I would say to others in how really to develop your leadership skills. The other two, and I guess I really have three that I go by. I heard it before, and it's be yourself and be authentic. When I took over my first leadership role, someone gave me a book that said, play like a man, win like a woman. And I thought, what? That's just not me. And I ended up throwing it in the trash because I didn't want to play like a man. I figured if I was going to be able to make it, then I needed to be who I was. And I can only recommend that, that be who you are and be yourself and stay true to yourself, and do that with the knowledge that you are good enough, and pretending to be someone else is, well, exhausting, number one. And number two, it's not really going to get you anywhere. And I think the third thing is to be able to ask questions. And, I really appreciated Stephanie's comment to just raise your hand and be that person. Be that person that puts the tough question in the room where you make people think, and you maybe say the thing that people are thinking but don't want to ask out loud. And I think it's important to really be willing to challenge the room, to challenge those around you, to really face maybe just a different perspective. It's I think everybody, independent if you're male or female, you come from a different background and you have the opportunity to think in a different way. And that's what makes us successful, is working in a team with a diverse background. And asking these sorts of questions helps people to get outside of themselves. So I also thought about, what I could share just from my own experience. And I think one of the most memorable parts of my career, I guess I would say, was my first executive role. And this is really, I guess, teaching me to get out of my comfort zone, and also at the end helping others to get out of theirs. My first executive role, I was responsible for the industrialization of products from prototype into serial production for our truck tires. So I was responsible for 7 plants worldwide and had a team of both local engineers and remote engineers in the plants. I was also 27 and had the average age of the team was about 45, with a lot more experience than I did. And so when they offered me the job, I turned it down. And I was just scared. I thought, why would people listen to me? I don't really know anything about this. How can I lead these people without just being able to know in detail myself how to do these things? And how can I constantly be in a state of conflict, which is the normal way between the technology and research and development and the production? And I am so thankful that my future boss's boss caught wind of it, and he invited me in for a nice little chat. And he asked me a pretty simple question. He said, "Do you want to be a part of change, or do you want to drive change?" He said, "Both are fine. Both are really good paths to take, but you should think about what it is that you want before you decide if you want to take this job or not." And I was so thankful that he had asked me the right question to help me look past my fears and all of the reasons why I wasn't good enough for this job to the reasons why I should take it. And that was the opportunity to make a difference. And I could probably tell you that it was easier than I thought it would be, and it wasn't challenging, but it was hard. But at the end, I was able to work together with an experienced group of people who taught me how to listen because, well, partially because I had to, and partially because I realized that that's similar to what Cara said. That's how you learn, and that's how you get better. And that's how you not only get better for yourself, but also for the organization. And the other thing is, I think just being able to put myself in their shoes. So I was now in a role where I could make changes, but I didn't assume that change was easy and going to be easy for other people. And so being able to understand why they were having reservations about change or doing things differently really helped to get them on board and for us to go through that change process together. I don't know if anyone rides a Peloton, but I've gotten into it recently, and one of the instructors says, change is inevitable, growth is optional. And I think that really stuck with me because change is happening, and it's all about how you tackle the situation around you. And I think if I've learned anything, it's that leadership and becoming a leader and becoming a better leader happens in baby steps. It's being able to realize that you've cut down your mile time from a 10-minute mile to a 9:50, and then to work towards a 9:45. And it's not about making a huge jump, but it's about knowing that you're continuously growing. That really, I think, helps to motivate you to keep growing and learning. So that's a little bit about me and my journey. I'd like to hand back over. I guess at this point, we're going to start on the Q&A.
Thank you so much, Catherine. You and I have something in common, and I also have on my desktop, I actually have quotes that kind of are the very first thing that when I sit down at my desk every morning, these are quotes, and change is one of my quotes on there. I think it's important to find something to kind of motivate yourself every day. We all have those days when we walk in and we just need that extra little oomph behind us, and finding those, whatever quotes they are, whatever music you need to listen to remind yourself that you deserve your seat at the table. I think that is really important for women as we continue to strive and make headways in different industries where we have not normally been. It's important to remind yourself that you deserve to be there. And when you look around the room and you're the only one in that room, just remember that you deserve your seat at the table. All right, so all of you have given us a lot to think about. I have a couple questions here, and I'd like to just kind of go around in alphabetical order. My first one is to Cara. What advice would you give to a young woman starting off in our rubber and tire industry?
So I love this question. And first of all, I have to let you know that I was furiously taking notes on what everybody else had to say, because these are some really intelligent women who have been through a lot. So as far as what advice I would give back to a young woman, one of the things that I did wrong when I started, there's a lot of things that we talk about, the things that we've done well, but one of the things that I did wrong when I started was I thought that I had to work harder than a man. And if you listen to a lot of these ladies, what they've talked about is to be yourself, and it's okay to be yourself. But I always thought I had to prove myself just a little bit more just because I was female. And that came off as arrogance. It didn't come off as I was really trying or I was working hard. It came off as I was trying to put myself or position myself above other people. So to a young woman starting in this industry, there are no limits to what you can do. There are no limits to whether you want to be a director, whether you want to be a contributing engineer, whether you want to build tires, whatever you want to do. We have successful women in all areas of our company and across the industry. So there's a lot of amazing things that you can do, but never feel like you have to prove yourself just because you're a woman or just because you're female. So I heard a little bit of that in what Catherine had to say, as well as some of the other ladies. So just really, be yourself, work hard, and that's the most important thing.
Excellent, excellent point. Does anybody else have any feedback or anything they'd like to jump in on that?
The only thing that I would have is that I was given a statistic the other day that when it comes to applying to jobs, that women generally will apply for something that they feel that they're at least 80 to 90% have the check marks for. Guys will go in at 20%. So even if you don't feel you have the qualifications for it, go for it. The guys are.
Amen, Andrea.
Amen.
Yeah. And I mean, at the end, the worst thing that can happen is that you don't get the job. And that is a learning. And that is, I mean, if every interview I've ever had, round up in a new job, then you wouldn't be where you are today. So you need those sorts of learning experiences to also teach you how to be better. So I can only reiterate that's definitely a very good statement.
Absolutely. And I think another thing that women have sometimes a fear of being told no. And I think that that's something that once we accept that no is okay, no, not now is what something I was told before, that, women hear no, not ever, and men hear no, not now. And so we women need to understand that no just means not now. This just might not be the perfect time for that. Okay, Stephanie, did you have an advocate during any portion of your career?
Yes, I would say my previous CEO, I mean, he was very supportive of me. He would invite me to anything. He would always tell me, go show what you're made of, speak up. I definitely felt like I was in over my head in that role where he had me as part of the board, public board. And of course, being the only female, which has been the case for the majority of my career, just having the confidence to speak up. And I definitely got that from him because he was very supportive. My current CEO is the same way. He's very supportive. He's, if you have something to say it. In fact, he gets very uncomfortable if I stay silent. So you can always count on me to put my 2 cents in. So I definitely believe in women need to speak up more. They need to raise their hand and say, their opinion. I think there's a way to say it so that you don't come across too assertive or too aggressive, as, women tend to have the, the thought that people say that. I don't believe it's necessarily true, but I think it's finding, that signature voice in your style as a leader to be able to speak confidently and at least being heard.
Fantastic. Anyone else want to have any input there? And I just want to remind the attendees again, you can submit your questions directly to rpnevents@crane.com. We'll get those questions answered for you here. Okay, next question is for Catherine. Nope, Andrea, I'm sorry. Were there any key factors that you can remember that drew you into the science field, the field of science? Was there anything that you remember when you were younger that was like, I'm going into science? What was your aha moment?
I don't know that there was necessarily an aha moment. Math has always come more easily to me, better than English. Actually, speaking here is a little more of a challenge than being behind spreadsheets and everything. But math always came easily. And then when I got into high school, chemistry just lit up. I had an amazing teacher, and I think anybody would say that if you've had a great teacher in any particular subject, that they're a strong influence to what you can end up being. And my undergrad actually ended up being in chemical engineering because I lit up with that topic. So I have to say that I had Mr. Rodruck was my chemistry teacher, and I thank him very much.
That's fantastic that you can actually remember his specific name. I'm always envious of people that can remember like those teachers that, that had that impact. I think I tell people I have a cash brain. And so it it consistently dumps out things that I don't feel I need to maintain at that very moment to make room for what else is needed. I'll pose the same question to any of you that remember that aha moment.
Yeah, Andrea, I absolutely love what you said about being exposed and forming that connection to science. I am a lucky one where my mother was a science teacher. She taught physics and biology. And when we were kids in the neighborhood growing up, we had neighborhood science camps at my mom's house. So, other people had sports camps, but we had the cool camps. We had the science camps. We did anything from, my mom would go to a butcher and grab things like parts of the animal, like a cow's eyeball. We dissected a cow's eyeball. We made toilet paper rockets. We made slime before there was Pinterest. So there's lots of really fun stuff we did as a kid. And I think there's a really good age to get women interested in science. I heard from a friend of mine who is a Formula One tire engineer, and he said that his daughter came home from preschool and was told that women don't do science, girls don't do science. And she was crying when she came home. And he talked about some of these successful women that have been in science. So really talking to girls at a young age, what can we do to help the next generation? What can we do to get more women in science? I think it's talking to the girls. I love the 7 to 10 age group. That's a really, really influential age, and to let them know that they can do these things. So thank you very much, Andrea, for your answer.
That was fantastic. All right, so we have a question from the audience. Let me scroll down here. Is it ever too late to make a pivotal career change? And I'll open that to anyone that wants to jump in there first.
No.
I'm here resounding unanimous no.
And I think it's never too late, and there's never the perfect time. I mean, when I started my career, I had heard from other women executives, okay, if you want to have a career, it's best to do it before you have your first kid, because otherwise then people forget about you when you leave on maternity leave. This was at the time when I was in Germany, and people would take, 1 to 3 years. And I didn't like that answer, because coming back, I didn't feel like I should have to choose. And at the end, there's no perfect time for anything. And I don't think you can also plan it. I think what you can do is realize if that fire inside of you is telling you, okay, it's time to do something different, and then follow your gut, because 9 times out of 10, your gut's going to steer you in the right direction.
It's an excellent point. I think that goes back to that fear of making a mistake or doing something out of the proposed timeline that we sometimes give ourselves in lives, and realize that there's room, room to change and grow and make changes there. All right, the next question we have, any comments or suggestions on your methods for putting together an effective team for a project? So what do you look for when you are building your team for that next big project? And I will go in reverse order this time and start with Catherine.
It's an interesting concept, because I did a training 2 years ago, which was talking about teams. And we had to fill out this form basically about if we were stranded on a boat and had only 20 things that we could take with us, and we had to rate them in terms of priority, what would we rate? And we did it individually, then we broke down into groups and filled it out as a group. And at the end, the long story short was, it was an analysis on how are the teams most effective in this case, coming up with the right priorities. And normally I would have always said, okay, you want an expert, somebody who knows exactly what they're talking about. But the outcome of this was, the second you have a real expert in the team, everyone pretty much defers to that person and the discussion stops happening. So what I've tried to do recently, and it takes some fine tuning, but to put really people together who know something about a topic, but who aren't experts, to try and get them really to bounce ideas off each other and really get that diversity to come out with some outside of the box ideas. Whereas before I would have taken maybe the more standard route of having an expert in the different areas that could really drive things forward.
Thank you, Catherine. I think that speaks a lot to your leadership style, and that you trust your team. And I think that that's the most important part of that. It's imperative that you find people that can all give us, the push that we need behind. We don't need everyone. We can't all be the expert. So we have to rely on each other for those different things that we need. That's the purpose of the team. When I was appointed this position, they did ask me that question, what is your leadership style? And I describe myself as a coach. I look at each of my team members as, I'm a soccer fan, so everyone has a potential place on that field. And if you know anything about soccer, there may be times that you switch positions, but that coach needs to trust that team knows their place, when to switch, and, what's best for the overall team and not just one individual. So great insight. Stephanie, I'm going to throw the next question at you, and it's from our audience. And I'll read it verbatim. I know you all want to be positive, but what would you say to the men in the tire industry who have negative attitudes toward the value of engineers, managers, and executives who happen to be women?
I probably couldn't say that live, what I would say to them. I'd probably say, I don't know, there's probably a couple books I could get them to read, but back it up a bit. I mean, they need to change their attitude. I mean, the fact of the matter is we need more females in, for us at Yokohama, we're trying to get more females into sales positions and also engineering positions. And, the world has changed, right? I mean, you no longer see that primarily females want to just be in a support role. They want to take over, they want to lead. And I think that's why we've had so many initiatives and so many events handling women in leadership. So, to the men, I don't even know what I would say to them right now. I'd say that you need to be open. You need to be supportive. You need to treat people how you expect you want to be treated. So, you can't have those ill feelings towards others based on diversity, gender, or anything else. So I'm sure Catherine might have some additional comments she'd probably add on that one.
Oh boy, woo! No, it's funny. We have in our management team. I have to say we have a very diverse group of people, and it's women, it's men, but it's also international. And so, in general, I think specifically with my team, it hasn't been much of an issue. But what I found in the different areas that I've been is it's a lot about just putting the facts on the table. I mean, at least the male engineers that I've worked with, if you can show the success, and this is a little bit against what Cara was mentioning about proving yourself, but show the success and just put the facts on the table and say, hey, listen, do you remember in this situation where we did this? I even thought about at some point handing out for the entire executives at our company Lean In, the book. And, you can say it's the right idea or it's the wrong idea, but what it does is it at least gives some insight into what the oversight of females, that there's that you're at a table and you say an idea and no one listens, and the guy sitting next to you says your idea and everyone's like, wow, that was the greatest thing ever. And it's more just to say, take a step back and really open your eyes and try to see how things could be different, better, worse, indifferent, but just different by having a more diverse team. And if it's a really hard pill to swallow with women, maybe go into internationality first, because it's unfortunate, but in a male-dominated industry, I have found that you will find those men everywhere. And my experience is baby steps.
For me, one of the examples I would give would be when I worked in a tire plant for 4 years, and plenty of guys doing guy things and acting like guys. But I treated everyone equally, whether it was the guy mopping up the floor or the plant manager. And when they asked me a question, I would go find the answer, and I'd come back and I'd give it to them, and they were generally surprised. And I treated them with the respect that I wanted to be treated with. And over a period of time, some of the guys, just took me as another one of the guys. And when somebody started razzing me, they would pick on the guy that was razzing me. So sometimes getting a team around you that they trust you and they understand what you're doing, they're going to support you in the face of somebody that's not being positive.
That's an excellent point. It does take. It's not just a woman issue. It's acknowledgement from men, and just like in any other D&I situation, it's the acknowledgement and for them to speak up and to make sure that they are not being bystanders. When they see that, that helps to limit and decrease that just by being a voice. Not to protect us, but to be accountable. I think those are difference between that. And a lot of times people, well, I don't want a protector. That is correct. We don't need protecting. We just need you to be accountable when you're in that group and you hear that kind of talk that is derogatory or negative. Be the voice that speaks up and says, "Hey guys, not here. That's not our culture here." So I think that's so important. Okay, Cara, next question is for you. What advice do you have for leading a team of senior engineers and experts and holding them accountable?
So this is a great question, especially now in COVID times where we have a lot of people working from home. I find that I'm very results driven. So instead of being this is the amount of time you need to spend on this project, looking at it more of this is the goal that we need to accomplish. So if whatever we need to do to accomplish this goal, and however you decide to go about it, this is a great way to do it. I think especially now that a lot of us are working from home, being able to have regular one-on-ones, which sometimes can be tough, or working group meetings are also helpful. And then just really making sure you at the end of the day, these are the results, maybe having weekly check-ins. I think if you don't have a weekly check-in, sometimes you lose a little bit of that. But I think also looking at things like a video chat or having something like a Jabber, Bridgestone, we use Jabber, or some other ways to be able to chat during the day. Maybe even it's phone calls and text messages. But the other thing is just like asking if there are roadblocks, what kind of roadblocks can we clear, those sorts of things. So hopefully that's a decent answer.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next question that we have from the audience. Have you any suggestions to the industry at large, especially the leaders, about how to change the balance of the tire industry from 90 men to 10% women and move closer to a 50-50 or more reflective of the population? And I will open that question to anyone that wants to go first.
I'd love to start if that's okay.
Sure.
I think we have to look at what's graduating. Right now in mechanical engineering, for example, we have about 20% female and 80% male. In chemistry, it's a lot higher, a lot closer to that 50-50. But we have to be able to have that pool to draw from. It's hard to create a 50-50 environment if what's graduating and what the people coming out of college are 20% female. My very first job offer that I got, I was told that the reason I was getting this job offer was because 20% were female and I would fit that 20% quota. Needless to say, I didn't take that job. But you have to look at what's graduating, and then you have to get kids interested in science. Back to what I was saying before, you have to catch them early. And you have to show them that things are cool in the tire industry. A lot of times my little sister is an engineer who works on airplanes, and airplanes are definitely cool, but tires are cool too. I mean, they hold you to the ground while you're turning. They carry big mining tires that are as big as a house, and race tires that go 240 miles per hour, and tires that can be retreaded and run a million miles. So there's a lot of exciting things. And to talk to kids at an early age to get them interested in science. So they go to school. So we have that larger pool of engineers to pull from so that we can actually get more close to that 50-50 balance.
Excellent point. And remember, there will be no airplanes without the tires. They have to take off some kind of way. So we're equally as important. I'll open that question up to anyone else that wants to chime in. Okay. All right. The next question we have is kind of to piggyback on what you said, Cara, but how can we push more young women to pursue a career in science or technology? And I definitely think starting young is a key factor, but specifically, what can we do with the younger age group to kind of drive that curiosity and keep them interested in this industry? And I will turn that to Stephanie.
I honestly don't know. I mean, I think a lot has been said already, is just really starting children when they're young. I mean, I have two boys. I don't have little girls to get in science, but I know they're complete opposites. And I have one that plays with a science kit, and he's 7 years old, and I have one who's in sports. So, I mean, everyone's different, male or female, and I think it starts in the schools at a young age, and having the fun teachers doing hands-on experiments in science, and also encouraging females to be in our industry. I know we have tried to make tires super cool, and we've been successful in the last couple of years to bring on more females into engineering and into our sales positions. And I think it's changing. We see a change here, and we're hopeful that we can encourage that trend and continue to get more females into our R&D center. So I think it just takes some communication and maybe marketing yourselves differently, but to try to get our headcount up with some more diversity and some more females in this role.
One of the things that I've experienced recently with our school is we have something called Science Olympiad, and it is football games for science jocks. They are going all day long, taking tests or doing experiments and things like that, and it's a competition. And at the end, whole schools are getting up and cheering for these folks that have mastered whatever science test, or they built electric cars or whatever. It is the coolest thing to watch, and to get more schools involved with those type of activities. Cheer on the brains, male, female, cheer them on, and they'll be willing to go more for us.
Absolutely agree. I drug my youngest daughter around to all of our conferences, starting when she was in middle school, and she is now going into the rubber industry. And so that leads me to my next question. I always tell people when they ask me, how did you get to the rubber tire industry? And I say, well, I didn't find it, it found me, and a lot of us, I think, kind of, I won't say stumbled, but we found our way into this industry and progressed through all through different paths. So does anyone have a story or anything they'd like to share on how they found the rubber industry?
Yeah, maybe I can start with that. I think it's the same. So I didn't find it, it found me. I actually found Conti through Craigslist, if you want to believe that. I applied for a job in Boston, and I fell in love with the city. So I was just looking everywhere and anywhere. And at that point, it was, the search engines that you look for jobs. And I found an advertisement for Conti. And I mean, I'm a mechanical engineer, but I really had never thought about tires. And then it was, in my case, it was the opportunity to go abroad and to live in Europe for a few years, which really was for me the push to join. And honestly, after 6 months, I fell in love with tires. After you get to know it, I mean, Cara, what you mentioned, they're pretty cool. Like, it's a pretty cool industry to be in, and it's still evolving, even though it's been around for so long. And there's still a lot to do. And I guess most people that I talk to, I mean, I don't know, maybe it's also different in Akron because you have really tire engineering. But I'm from the East Coast, and we didn't have tire engineering, so it found me by accident.
Mine was almost comical. I was sick with walking pneumonia my senior year, and sent my roommate in to go sign me up for interviews. You had to sign up like 3 weeks in advance, and if you didn't sign up, you weren't going to get interviews. So I sent her in to go sign me up for something, and she signed me up for Goodyear. Otherwise, I never would have ended up in tires.
Cara, how about you? How'd you bounce into the rubber tire industry?
So mine was a love of race cars, actually. When I was in college, I talked about my sister being an airplane engineer. My grandfather was actually an engineer for NASA. And I always thought the space shuttle would be cool. But one day I wandered down into the machine shop where they design and build an open wheel race car, a Formula SAE program. And I didn't know anything about tools. I couldn't tell you which way to turn a wrench and which way to turn a screwdriver. But I learned, that's where I was talking about starting at the shop floor and working your way up. And all I knew is I really, really wanted to make cars go fast for a living. So I thought, wow, if I could get paid to do something around race cars, that would be absolutely phenomenal. And well, I'm from Akron, Ohio, so there's a lot of great tire industry here in Akron. You grow up and you know the names of Goodyear and Firestone and Bridgestone, and there's BF Goodrich buildings downtown. So you just know this. It's in our DNA in Akron. But I knew I wanted to work in racing, and I looked up to try to see what companies in the area had a great history in racing. And Firestone won the first Indianapolis 500 in 1911. So I thought, all right, that's a good way to start, and I'll start in vehicle dynamics, and I worked my way into the racing side. But yes, I kind of fell into it as probably as part of being in Akron, Ohio. So I love racing. Tires make the race cars stick to the ground, so that's where I'm at.
Excellent story. We Akronites are definitely immersed in tires and rubber all around us. And, listen to the stories of the smell of rubber. The whole city would smell like rubber, years ago. So, Stephanie, how about you?
For me, it's a little different. I'm in human resources, so obviously you have HR in every industry, but I love hearing your stories of why you're passionate about tires. For me, honestly, was looking for great company, which Yokohama is an amazing company, been around for over 100 years. And when I came here, I believe I had about 9 interviews, and every person I met with really just shared that the culture was like family. So, and it truly is. It's a very special organization, and I fell in love with that. I fell in love with the people here when I went through my interviewing process, and have since fallen in love with tires and didn't even realize, what tires do besides that I need them on my car, right? So I'm not an engineer, but just really believe in the product and believe in our company. So it's a little different for me.
I think you make a great point, though. One of the things that I think why I thought this panel was very well put together is that it does have a diverse group. And I think what's important for us as we do reach out to the next generation and start to share what's available in this industry is that it's not one path. It's multiple paths that all can lead you to this rubber and tire industry. So I think that's extremely important. The last question I have is kind of just thinking back, as we try to develop young women into looking into science careers, or just not even necessarily the science careers, but just coming into this industry. What age would you visit yourself for a pep talk? You are all successful in your careers at this point. What age would you go back and give yourself a pep talk? And I will go in alphabetical order. I'll start with Cara.
Yeah, mine is 7 or 8. Again, with my mom so interested in science, it hit me at an early age. But I think my 7 or 8-year-old self would not believe that I would be director of a global tire company. And I think just the fact that I would be able to work with some really amazing race cars and things like that. I think a lot of it, so I had the interest in science, but I think the confidence factor. And I think young girls often are told that they can't do the same thing as boys. I think going back to that age and saying, hey, you're not going to believe this. This is a great story. You're just not going to believe it. And being able to talk to my 7 or 8-year-old self, I think that's where I'd go.
It's definitely a great age. Andrea?
I would go back to my sophomore year in college, my 19-year-old self, when sophomore year for engineering, at least chemical engineering, was really awful, about the worst. And I would go back there and say, it gets better. But what it does do is give you the toughness to survive the load that you're going to get. And the toughness that you develop during your sophomore year really plays through the rest. So hang in there is what I'd say to my 19-year-old self.
That's definitely a great age. My daughter is in that very age right now, taking classes that I keep telling her they sound fake. They're so difficult, they sound fake. Stephanie, how about you?
I'd probably pick high school. I would have spent less time caring what anyone thinks. I definitely always knew I wanted to be a female leader. I used to play office, but I was not playing secretary. I was playing a leader, and I would have my, Barbies and dolls all sitting around, and I was probably directing what they needed to do for the day. So, definitely always knew what I wanted to do and where I'm at, and very happy with where I'm at today. Thank you.
Fantastic. And Catherine?
Yeah, I think in retrospect, probably back to the situation that I mentioned in my introduction. So to that point where I really just questioned myself and what I could do in this leadership role, and I turned it down. I mean, honestly, I'm so thankful for this man, a manager, who really gave me that second chance, because that doesn't happen very often, and I don't expect it to ever happen again. So I would have liked to slap some reason and sense into myself at that point, I think.
Fantastic. Well, those are all of our questions. I want to thank all of you guys. You have been a fantastic panel. You've given us some great insight. And I think that you are leading by example. You know, as we look back and we talk a little bit about mentoring, the key takeaways that I have are, you know, be curious, be okay to use your voice, speak up. I love the idea of leaning in and being consistent and keeping that integrity, and never stop learning. I think that's so important as well. And another one that someone had mentioned before was finding a sounding board for your crazy moments. So as we all progress into leadership, they say it gets lonelier at the top. So I think as you start to climb that corporate ladder, just remember to find someone that can be your sounding board for when you have those moments that you just need some clarity and some help. So thank you again for everyone for joining, and I'll turn it back over to Erin.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you, Cara, Andrea, Catherine, Stephanie. I am inspired by your stories, and I know that many of our viewers are too. Thank you so much for your time. We couldn't thank you enough. And Lakeisha, we can't thank you enough either for taking the time to help moderate this panel today. One more thank you to all of our sponsors who are really helping to make iTech 2020 a success. The virtual edition wasn't what we planned 2 years ago, but it's where we are today, and their support and transition has made this possible. So thank you so much. I hope all of you who joined us today had a wonderful time. Thank you again, and join us tomorrow as the conversation continues.